What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Crush City Territory. I'm Chandler Rome with Tyler Stafford. And Tyler, what is that on your face?
Yeah, so you're watching on YouTube. I accidentally have a mustache. I was shaving the other night, and the thing that everyone is afraid of happened to me, which is that my electric razor died when I had just like a Fu Manchu rocking. Luckily, it was just late at night, so I could shave it the next morning. So I went to bed with literally just like the full-on 90s bullpen arm goatee looking thing. And then when we woke up the next morning, my wife was like, it's not terrible if you like trim up the sides. And unfortunately, that's all I needed to hear from her of like, cool, I'm going to become a mustache guy now. So we're going to try it out for a bit. So I'm rocking it. Plus, we're about to have another baby. And I feel like as a father, there's got to be at least one picture of me with a baby with a mustache on just to complete the cycle. Did your dad have a mustache growing up?
He does. He did growing up. Now he's got a full goatee.
Okay. I remember my dad had one for 20 years, and the day that he shaved it off, we all had to have like a family meeting. It was like, what's happening? You look so weird. So that's what I'm trying to traumatize my children, basically.
Your dad was a pastor, right? Or is a pastor?
He was, yeah.
Did you guys have to pray as to whether the mustache would be gone?
Well, for those of you, the friends of mine in my group chats that grew up with me, our music pastor had an even more iconic mustache. Shout out Jack. And when he shaved it off, it was truly terrifying. He had like the caterpillar rocking for a long time.
There's a music pastor and another kind of pastor. There's different.
Yeah,
there's different.
I play guitar in a church.
Oh.
Yeah, there's different roles.
Well, glory be.
Yeah, you're learning all kinds of new things. You'll have to come check it out.
Want to unpack one other thing you said. You said your wife woke up, looked at your mustache, and said it's not terrible.
Is that kind of which is high praise.
Is that the mantra for you guys? Is a union, or is that just a one-off thing?
Yeah, I mean what I'm shooting for as a husband is not terrible, and if I can reach that every day, I'm crushing it.
As I'm not married, but I would imagine the many married people that are listening to this probably can relate to that pretty heavily. So good job on relating to the common folk. Josh, have you ever heard of a guy named Josh Ekness?
Well, first off, I'm Tyler. We've been doing a podcast for a while now. We've known each other like a decade. But no, who is this fellow?
So he went to UH. Always can find a local angle with these things. Went to UH. He's from the Woodlands. Went to Lamar for a minute. He pitched in today's Grapefruit League game in Jupiter against the Astros, hometown matchup kind of thing. Cam Smith hit a triple off of him that was 105 off the bat, went 421 feet, and again sent Twitter into an absolute frenzy over a hit in an exhibition game. Josh Ekness has thrown 4 innings above high A as a professional.
Much so he's on the same level as Cam Smith. This is a fair matchup.
Right. Which is what I'm trying to say here is let's temper a lot of expectations for Grapefruit League games. Let's not fall in love with results, good, bad, indifferent, anything in the middle, because there's a lot more layers to this. You need to understand who these guys are facing, what these guys are working on, things like that. Cam Smith did today what he should do against a pitcher of his ilk. But still very, very impressive to see him still raking in Major League Grapefruit League games. And Tyler, when we were discussing what we're going to do for this podcast, I said we're going to do a pitching preview, which we are, because I just can't sit here and break down Grapefruit League games. I can't. I know Jose Altuve's played in left field 3 times since the last time we talked. I saw he had that one adventurous throw, his first chance out there.
From about 30 feet behind second base, it was not far out in the outfield.
Yeah, I just can't break this down. Like, maybe I'm bad at my job, maybe I don't care enough, but I can't break down like at bats in exhibition games or defensive plays in exhibition. Like, and if that's what you guys want, then let me know. Then we'll devote this podcast. We'll do play-by-play of Grapefruit League games if you guys want that. But Tyler, before we move on to the pitching, I guess we have to get it out of the way. Is anything in the last, 5 or 6 Grapefruit League games since we talked, has anything caught your eye?
Yeah, Cam Smith rules. I don't care that it's spring training. I couldn't hit 500 off a little league team. Like, I don't care who he's playing against. He's freaking raking the ball. It's so much fun. And like we said, like, you can just tell, like, watching him in the batter's box, like, he's so good. And again, yeah, it's spring training. They don't count yet. But I think we've seen enough to at least say, like, okay, you can pencil this guy in as being in the big leagues by the end of the year, next year. Again, who knows what it's going to be career-wise, but sometimes you have top prospects and it's like they're so far away that you're not even really caring. That was the thing with Forrest Whitley forever, right? Being drafted out of high school, it's like, even if he's great, he's 3 or 4 years away. Like, Cam Smith is close. And I think that's the fun part, is knowing, like, all right, this is a spot of need for the team. He looks good. He doesn't look overmatched, which is really all you're looking for, is like, as long as you're not getting embarrassed up there, the fact that he's doing this well is just icing on the cake.
No, you are 100% right that he looks like he belongs, which is what they want from these non-roster guys when they bring them up to camp. They don't want the guys that are going to walk in eyes wide, don't know where to go, tail between their legs, and just don't look like they belong in a big league clubhouse. But they also don't want the guy that's going to come in, talk a lot of smack, draw a lot of attention to himself, and kind of be over his head in terms of where you should be in the hierarchy of service time, organization, things like that. Cam Smith has found the perfect medium. Like, he's talkative, he's inquisitive. He's in the clubhouse, but you don't know he's there. Like, he's not making a big deal about himself. He's doing his interviews very kind of away from people, not making a big deal out of it. He knows how to handle this. The makeup has always been kind of off the charts with him, and I think they're seeing that in spring training. But one thing you said, Tyler, that I think kind of clicked with me, you mentioned Forrest Whitley. I remember my first spring training that I covered as a beat writer. Forrest Whitley threw a live BP on a backfield, and I kid you not, the entire Astros front office showed up. Like Jeff Luhnow, Brandon Taubman, Pete Patilla. Every AGM was out there. Every coach was out there. It was like 150 people watching this 20-year-old throw a live BP. And I'll never forget, I charted every pitch of this thing. I went up to Springer and Altuve and Correa and Bregman, all these guys that faced him to get what did his pitches look like? Like, how good is he? And we wrote it as if oh man, this guy's going to make the big leagues this year. Like, he's ready. And now we've seen how that's gone. So maybe that's why I'm jaded in this a little bit, that we have seen, whether it's Whitley, Justin Dearden a few years ago was doing this in Grapefruit League games. You saw Joey Loperfido last year. Like, we've seen guys light up the Grapefruit League and become the talk of spring training, and then you never hear from them. I don't think that's the case with Cam Smith, but I just think we're a little jaded kind of in that regard.
Yeah, like I said, it's not the stats, it's the way the at-bats look. And as we were talking, it's 3:04 on Monday afternoon, and he just worked a 7-pitch walk that looked really good. He fouled off a couple of tough fastballs, laid off a high one. Again, that's what you're looking for. Is it's not just that he's hitting the ball really hard. It's not just that he's getting the results. It's the at-bats that look really, really good.
When we said we would do play-by-play of Grapefruit League games, we were not lying. Thanks.
I'm gonna give you the. It's off of a man named Jesse Bergen. Who cares? Doesn't matter. The point is, looked good.
Point is, Cam Smith, the truth.
Give me one thing to be excited and happy about. Okay, don't take this away from me, Chandler.
Your mustache. You're excited and happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
We will do what I said earlier and preview the pitching staff. We're going to do that right after a word from our friends at Foul Territory.
Oh, Todd Father. Remember the good old days when we would have the cards in the binders, but then they'd get all messed up and we're trying to sell online and it's just real clunky? They really actually weren't the good old days, were they?
No, they were definitely not. But now there's a better way. The Arena Club has been dominant with this. You get to trade your cards, you could sell them. But the best part for me is getting them graded. I love everything about that. This new age of getting cards graded. You could display them on your online showroom, your mobile device. It's the coolest thing in the world.
Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the all-in-one trading card platform. You have to sign up for an account at arenaclub.com/foul. Just like Todd Father mentioned, there's a process that combines AI and human grading to get the job done. Right now, 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul. Use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul. Code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase.
All right, Tyler, let's talk about this pitching staff that I think kind of epitomizes or is kind of personifies what this team is, right? I think you have to feel very confident the top 4 or 5 guys on the whole staff. We're talking Framber Valdez, Hunter Brown, Bryan Abreu, Josh Hader, Ronel Blanco after what he did last year. Like, you feel really good about those 5 guys. After that, you're kind of like, oh, well, this guy was good in spurts last year. Like, this guy pitched well in AAA. This guy was in a trade for Kyle Tucker. Like, they must be okay. You can say the same thing about the lineup, where top 5 in the lineup, you feel really good about those guys. And then after that, you're like, oh man, there better be somebody to pick up the slack. And if there's a place that you don't want to be depth starved, it's on a pitching staff. But Tyler, weirdly, like, very candidly, I have hammered the Astros the last 2 off seasons for not signing veteran cheap starters on 1-year deals to give them some insurance. And it is borne out in those 2 years that they could have used that. I'm actually okay with what they went into camp with this year depth wise. I think getting Wisniewski and the Tucker trade helped, but this is a team that going into camp, I'm okay where they are just bodies wise, like numbers wise. Not sure what the effectiveness will be, but the amount of arms they have, I think they can make this work.
Yeah, like you said, you feel really good about the top 4 or 5, and then they've got 15 guys that you could squint and go like, you know, maybe they'll produce, whether it's coming back from injury, whether it's, you know, they had a short stint last year and maybe they look good, or, you know, maybe it's Forrest Whitley, whatever. But you need like 5 of those 15 to work out, and you need to figure it out by July. And if you get a third of those guys to be good, that's all you need, you know? And so I think they're in a good position to do that, certainly. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think those cheap kind of 1-year deals, especially when the Astros have had such young pitching staffs, it made a lot of sense. But this is my first fun fact I wanted to bring up to you. Do you know who the oldest starting pitcher is in the Astros rotation?
Is it Ronel Blanco?
It is Ronel Blanco. Yeah, he's a couple months older than Framber. They're both 31. And then you got Hunter Brown, 26, Arrighetti, 25, Wisniewski, 27. What about in the bullpen? Who's the oldest non-Rafael Montero? I'm talking 40-man roster. Who's the oldest guy in the bullpen?
Oh, man. I want to say Hader, but I don't think that's right.
It is Caleb Ort, who is 33 years old. Yeah, but the whole bullpen is old. The youngest guy in the bullpen is Whitley, who is somehow 27, which makes me feel really old because I remember him being drafted as a high schooler, and now he's just like an aged player. But they, you know, for so long they had like McCullers at 22, right? They had like young guys, and even Framber when he was first starting was just a lot younger, and they don't have that right now. They have a relatively veteran staff. And like I said, you just need a handful of the guys outside of your top core to work out. And I think they're in a good position to do that.
Ronel Blanco being the oldest starter, like he's barely pitched.
Yeah.
Like, you got to remember, this guy wasn't a starter until last year, like a true starter. So while he is older, like he has probably less wear and tear on him than just about anybody in that rotation. So it's a good place to be with depth wise. And we'll say this again, They're going to talk about, they being the Astros front office, Dana Brown, Joe Espada. They're going to talk about Christian Javier. They're going to talk about JP France as possibilities this season. I would be surprised if either of those guys throws meaningful starter level innings for the Astros in 2025 for no other reason than past history with guys in these similar positions has shown us that it doesn't work like that. Like, you can't just have a 12-month Tommy John recovery if you're Christian Javier and get back on the mound in July. Like, that's not how this works. JP France had a capsule tear in his shoulder and got it repaired. Like, you don't just do a linear 12-month recovery and you're back. And, you know, you heard this with Luis Garcia last year. You heard this with Lance McCullers. You heard it with Jose Urquidy. And yeah, I can't in good faith and good conscience project that those guys are going to pitch meaningful innings for the Astros in 2025. So, Tyler, if they don't pitch, take Javier and France out of it, do they still have enough to get through 162? Like, or are they going to have to not even make a huge trade, but like scour the waiver wire, like pick up a guy that gets DFA'd, something like that? Are they going to have enough to get through 162?
I don't think anyone ever has enough at the beginning of the season, but they have enough where they can figure out who they have. You know, they're not going to be in a position in May where it's like there's 4 arms on this team. We have to make a trade right now because we're not competitive, right? Like, I don't think the Astros are going to be in that position. Certainly as the year rolls on and you kind of have a sense of your playoff probabilities and, you know, the noise you're looking to make in October, you can go out and make a splash for somebody. Because the other thing is there's going to be some guy on, you know, on the Pirates that is a 4th-year reliever who was their 6th starter last year, who now throws 102 and has a 1.5 ERA. You know, like there's going to be somebody like that just pops up out of nowhere. And that's going to be the guy that everybody's looking for. But you can find somebody like that at some point during the year. I mean, think about obviously like Montero when he came over from the Mariners, and Graveman, who had, you know, an okay career, but he certainly was not a valuable asset prior to just having one really, really good year. And that's all you really need.
Phil Maton. He's like, he personifies that. Like, was a kind of a nothing piece of Cleveland's bullpen. But to be fair,
Colin McHugh, the Astros have done it forever, right?
Yeah. But and to be fair, a lot of people in Cleveland's bullpen, minus Emmanuel Clase, are anonymous and no one knows who they are. Phil Maton fit that category, came to the Astros and was a stone cold stud for 2 years. That's probably the biggest personification of what you're talking about. Let's talk about the guy that's very much a bona fide, legit superstar, and that the Astros are going to need to finish games. That's Josh Hader. Certainly did not have the first season in Houston that I think anyone was anticipating, but given the salary he makes, Tyler, and given kind of the fanfare around him, like anything short of having like a sub 1.5 ERA and having 40 saves would probably be considered a failure of a season for Josh Hader. He was not terrible last year. He had a 104 ERA plus, which means he was 4 percentage points above league average. The Astros are not paying him $19.5 million to be 4 points above league average. Tyler, what did you think of Hader's season last year? And was it worth the backlash that he received from a lot of angry fans online?
No, first off, he's really good. The thing with, first off, we talked about this before we started recording, but part of what made people so upset with Hader was he had so much bad luck in the first 6 weeks of the season when the Astros themselves were also struggling and every loss felt monumental. And so when you blow a couple saves early on, that kind of sticks in people's minds. If he had a bad 6-week stretch in June, I don't think we would be talking about it the same. But with those high-end relievers, I understand looking at ERA, I understand looking at ERA plus, but it fluctuates so heavily because there's so few innings, really all you can look at for predictors of success is, expected batting average or like whiff percentage, strikeout to walk ratio, that kind of stuff. Josh Hader had the highest whiff percentage of any pitcher in baseball. He was in the 100th percentile for whiff, and he was in the 99th percentile for expected batting average at 173. So he was whiffing 40% of the swings that he got, which is stupid. And the expected batting average is 173. So yeah, he's going to give up a hit every 8 at bats. And sometimes those run together where you just have some bad luck where you've got, 2 or 3 that group in one outing, but he still was very good. And I fully expect him to have a good year.
Hader also had his lowest whip since 2021 last season.
He was really good. He just like I said, had some weird stuff at the beginning. Defense wasn't great behind him, but I'm not worried about Josh Hader.
The thing that got him last year, he gave up 12 home runs last year, which is, I believe, more than he gave up in 2022 and 2023 combined. Listening to Hader talk at FanFest and listening to some guys talk in spring training when I was in West Palm, it sounds like he just became pretty predictable. I mean, and you saw it a little bit in the Tigers series, and you saw it kind of throughout the season. Like when hitters go up there, like they know they're getting like one pitch to hit the entire time, and they're just sitting fastball. And even though his fastball is elite, if a hitter's sitting on it's going to hunt it. Like these guys get paid too. They can hit it a very long way. So Hader has talked about trying to use his changeup more in spring training. I will say the huge caveat here, every pitcher says that. Justin Verlander went to spring training every year and said, I'm going to throw my changeup more this year. And very rarely did he ever follow through with that. That is an axiom that every veteran pitcher in spring training always says, I'm working on my changeup. I'm working on my changeup. I'm working on my changeup. Maybe this one has more merit to it just because we can see the data of, how his sequencing kind of fell out of line, how hitters were just sitting on the fastball and how the home runs were a byproduct of that. But with a guy that's this good, Tyler, like I'm not going to say he's got to change everything he did, but I'm probably more willing to just trust him that he's going to find a way to get it right. I don't think this is a situation where he's got to reinvent his arsenal or throw something more or change the release point of anything. Like this is a guy that, as we've just detailed, was good last year. This was not a situation where this was a bad reliever, just maybe not to the price point that the Astros, had given him.
Yeah, I'd like to see him dot his sinker inside on righties more because it runs arm side. And so if it's tailing out over the edge of the plate, batters can barrel it up a little bit easier. If it's coming in on your hands and then has that late action, it's a lot harder to turn around on that, especially when you have to worry about that back foot slider that he throws. And I think that's where most of his home runs came from, were just fastballs that ran out back over the plate. And so again, I think that, home run luck doesn't really carry over much either. I mean, you have guys that give up more home runs because they give up just more fly balls in general, but it's not like all of a sudden he's a guy that gets tagged for home runs a lot. Again, it just fluctuates so drastically when you're only throwing 60 innings a year.
Something Joe Espada said before I left West Palm Beach that piqued my interest. We know Josh Hader kind of bucked his career-long trends last year. He got more than 3 outs 7 times in the regular season after not doing it at all for the past 3 years in the regular season. We don't need to relitigate how much Bryan Abreu pitched last year. I believe there was only one qualified reliever that pitched more than him last year. It seems like he pitches in every other game the Astros play. Without Ryan Presley, that really is going to put an onus on Joe Espada to be careful with how he deploys these guys. And the thing he said he's most concerned with this year was not necessarily their appearances. He's more concerned with when he gets these guys up. Whether there's a guy in the 7th inning that's, there's 2 on and 1 out, does he get Bryan Abreu up and throwing in the bullpen or does he let whoever is pitching in the 7th inning try to get out of it, because I think that's something a lot of fans don't take into account. When AJ Hinch managed here, AJ considered when a reliever got up and warmed in the bullpen, he considered that an appearance, because look, you don't just magically get hot. Like, you have to exert effort. You have to throw at game speed in the bullpen to get ready to go. And Joe Espada said that he wants to limit how much Bryan Abreu gets up to warm up in the 7th inning. With Josh Hader, how much Josh Hader gets up to warm up maybe in the middle of the 8th if Bryan Abreu is struggling. So, Tyler, I think that's going to show us a lot early in the season who this team trusts behind Abreu and Hader, and a longer leash maybe than you saw last year from Joe Espada with these guys. And I'll give Joe Espada a pass on the leash last year, because when you start 7-19, you got to chase wins. They were chasing wins from May 1st on, and you're going to put in Abreu in the 7th inning if you need to win a game. You're going to ask Hader to get 5 outs if you need to win a game. So I think the whole team starting better could help, but we're going to see pretty early in the season, Tyler, like who this team trusts before their 2 back-end guys, and we're going to see whether they can get out of trouble, because this is a situation where Joe Espada does not want to put these guys in harm's way, especially after how much they were used last year.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's kind of the fun of the start of the season, is figuring out who those kind of middle relievers are. And you just hope that you can make those decisions with a 4-game lead in the division, right? Like that's really what it's going to take for the Astros to figure that kind of stuff out, is to get off to a good start as a team.
I think we've talked enough about Framber and Hunter Brown. They've kind of reached that echelon of, you just kind of expect them to go out there and be good. Framber more so than Hunter Brown, but Hunter Brown had such a large sample size by the end of the season. It wasn't like he was good for 2 months. Like, he was good for 4.5 months and then absolutely shoved in a playoff game, in a do or die game. Like, I think we can graduate him to you kind of expect him to go out there and be good. The other 3 members of this rotation that are going to open the season: Hayden Wesneski, Spencer Arrighetti, and Ronel Blanco. We talked about Blanco a little bit. Where are you on Spencer Arrighetti? Because I'll tell you, from being in West Palm Beach, this is a kid that is brimming with confidence. Like, he's acting like a caffeinated, very hyped up, kid that's really excited to be at school. Like, he's talking to everybody. He is so much more confident, so much more set in his skin. Like, you can tell that what he did last year has really, really, propelled him into a good place mentally this spring. But let's look at what he did last year. I mean, he still had a 4.53 ERA. And I know people will look at his final 15 starts of the year, his final 15 appearances. He did have a 3.60 ERA in those 80 innings. He almost no-hit the Phillies. He pitched very well down the stretch, but did have a FIP around 4.15, which indicates there was some fortunate luck behind it. He threw more innings last year than we have ever seen him throw, than he's ever thrown in his professional career. I think Astros fans sometimes they don't realize what a good 4th or 5th starter is. They believe that those guys have to have sub-3 ERAs and pitch like Verlander and Cole. If the Astros get a 4.5 ERA from Spencer Arrighetti for 160 innings, they take that in a heartbeat. But do you think he's poised to maybe take a little bit more of a leap, or are we going to see maybe some regression to a mean?
I mean, he's got the stuff, right? Like, he's the breaking ball is really good. And it's just a consistency thing, right? I mean, there are games, like you said, where he can go out and almost no-hit a team, and then there are games where it's like, oh, you got to get somebody up in the 2nd inning because he just doesn't have it today. And the maturation of a starting pitcher is when you can get through 5 without your best stuff. He hasn't shown that yet, but I don't think that means that he's not capable of doing it, right? And like you said, I mean, if you could pencil him in for 5 1/3 and 3 runs every 5th day, the Astros would be so excited. And I mean, that's a 4.5 ERA, but who cares? Like that's what you need from a starter. And so it's really going to be limiting the starts where he has to come out in the third inning. And if he can do that, then whatever he puts up, they're going to be excited with. But if he's going every fifth day and taking the ball into the fifth inning, that's a great fourth starter.
And I think it's important to underscore kind of the transformation he went through while in the big leagues last year. Like, it was written about and talked about at the time, but like Alex Bregman like had to sit him down and basically be like, you need to read the scouting report. Like, you need to read that Luis Robert destroys sweepers in this quadrant of the zone where you threw him today against the White Sox. And when Bregman asked Arrighetti why he threw that pitch, he was like, well, that's one of my best pitches. And Bregman was like, well, that's cool, but Luis Robert hammers these pitches in that quadrant and you set him up. So it has been a full rounded maturation for Arrighetti. He's learning, how to follow scouting reports. He's learning other hitters' tendencies. Because let's face it, in AAA and AA, I mean, you were down there like with the hooks. Was Joe Musgrove or Chris Davinsky or McCullers or anybody back there like really?
Josh Hader.
Josh Hader. Yeah. Were they reading scouting reports before the game, or was it just go out there, throw your best stuff, and you can beat them?
Yeah, I mean, when you're facing subpar competition, 7 of the 9 guys in the lineup you can just overpower, and so you're not having to worry about that too much. Honestly, that comment made me less. I mean, yes, you want your pitchers reading the scouting report. To me, that's more of an indication of the catcher of not communicating. Hey, I don't care that you've shaking me off, like you're not going to throw this. You have to have some conviction there. And again, I think that's something that Yainer can get better at. It's not like you're stuck in that forever. But I mean, we talked about with Josh Miller of how do you balance when to throw your best stuff versus when do you throw the thing that the batter has weaknesses with. And it's a guessing game, right? Because I mean, that same game against Luis Robert or whatever, you could have very easily thrown that same sweeper, but if it had been set up by 2 fastballs inside and a changeup away and maybe the change in the eye level, then that sweeper all of a sudden generates a pop-up to shortstop. So it's not like you don't throw your pitches. It's just understanding when it's set up, when it's time to use them, and when it's time to rely on maybe some of your secondary stuff just because that hitter particularly crushes one pitch in one location, and maybe you just want to avoid that.
We're 32 minutes in, so I feel like I can say no one's going to be listening, so I feel like I can say this without starting a war. This is why they liked Martin Maldonado. Like Martin Maldonado, that is his value. These pitchers inherently just trusted anything he punched into PitchCom. If they shook him off, they better have had a damn good reason for doing it. That's not to say Yainer Diaz can't get there. But I mean, again, this is a young player. This is a player that is still learning the big leagues, a player that's still evolving as an everyday catcher. I think he'll be better at that this year from having the experience of last year. But everyone that wondered why Martin Maldonado kept playing so much, that's why.
We also have to remember that in the minors, like you're not as concerned with team success as a pitcher, right? Like you're really just trying to put on tape what you're good at. And so you're not scouting, you're not game planning as much as you do in the big league. So it is just an adjustment mentally to go from I'm trying to earn my spot on the way up to the majors. And so I just need to rely on my best stuff because that's what's gotten me here versus you're already here. Now you have to trust the scouting department, your catcher, your coaches, those types of things. And it's just a different mindset.
Real quick, before we get out of here, we mentioned 2 other guys, Ronel Blanco, Hayden Wesneski. Ronel Blanco, I kind of look at in the same vein as Arrighetti. Threw the most innings last year he's ever thrown before, was incredible the whole season, but you looked at some underlying metrics, you looked at FIP, you looked at things like that, and you could have sensed a regression, and it just never came. What do you expect from Ronel Blanco? Kind of the same question we were asking about Arrighetti, and then we've talked about Wesneski before, but he has piggybacked Framber his first couple starts in Grapefruit League play. I'm just going to say the reason they did that is because Wesneski's original Grapefruit League debut got rained out. and they wanted to keep him on turn. So now he is just piggybacking with Framber every turn. That's not an indication of putting him in the bullpen, not an indication of anything more long term. He's going to be this team's 5th starter. What do you see from both of those guys?
I expect Blanco to give 4 1/3 innings in Game 6 of the ALCS and wrap it up for the Astros. Right? Isn't that what everyone's expecting?
I'll start writing the gamer now.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, he's good. You don't expect a no-hitter every time, but he's done it before, so maybe you do expect it every time. What's going on if he's given up a hit? But again, the Astros need guys who can eat innings. And if Blanco and Wisniewski and Arrighetti can combine for 400, 450 innings over the season, that's a win for the Astros.
You mentioned no hitters, and I don't know why this popped in my head. Like, do you realize, or do you think Astros fans realize how spoiled they are when, like, literally every other week some pitcher is carrying a no hitter into the 7th inning? Like, this does not happen.
I had a poster in my room growing up of the Yankees no hitter. Just because it was so rare that they, that they had I had a poster in my room for like 10 years of just the 6 pitchers and how they got all the outs in that. And then, now twice a year, somebody just carries a no hitter into the 8th inning. I mean, that happens across baseball too, but yes, the Astros have been very, very lucky with no hitters lately.
Let's end on a fun note. I endorse gambling in all its forms. We're not going to do an actual bet on this, but if I set the line at 1.5 Astros no hitters this season, are you taking the over or the under? And then give me the pitcher that will throw it.
I would take the under.
Okay.
That's a lot of no hitters to have 2 in a year. And then I would say Hunter Brown. I think Framber obviously can do it. We've seen it. I think obviously he and Brown both just get so many ground balls that if you just get in a rhythm, because that's the only way you can do it now. You're not going to strike out 16 guys in a no hitter anymore. You're just not going to pitch long enough to do that. But if you can have those innings that are 6 or 7 pitches and you get 3 ground outs, that's your best way of doing it. And so, yes, I'll go Hunter Brown.
I'm going to go the over. I'm going to say that they throw 2 no-hitters this year. I think one is a combined no-hitter against like whatever dregs the Angels run out there.
That we could do that. Yeah, sure. Whatever.
I think they're going to combine no-hit like the Angels in September when Wash has just like given up.
I can't wait to watch that. It's going to be so fun.
They're playing like a double-A lineup every night. And then I think Framber throws one single. I think he throws a solo no-hitter this year. He was so close in Texas last year before Corey Seager hit that ball out. It would be his 2nd no-hitter of his career. He would join some pretty elite company, and heading into free agency would probably increase his wallet a little bit. Not that he needs it, but would certainly help. If he does throw a no-hitter, I will be there to cover it in some capacity, and Tyler will join me to talk about it after he throws it on Crush City territory, which will continue this week with another episode. And then when the regular season starts, guys, 3 episodes per week. Please rate and review us on Apple. Please subscribe on YouTube so you can get notified whenever we drop a new pod, and we will talk to you later.
Bye.